Chapter 5165. The man sighed softly and gently patted the young girl's delicate back, silently comforting her. Yiqing Luo's eyes were red, her slender hands clutched the man's robe tightly as she fought back her tears. She understood. She understood. Her mother was able to meet her in a spiritual form after 10,000 years was all because of her longing for her and her obsession. This was her mother's last time limit. What she hoped for was for her to sit firmly on the throne of the Divine Emperor and control the God realm. So she used her prestige as the former Divine Emperor to oppress everyone in the God realm. After all, she was the legitimate former Divine Emperor. Feng Ji's appearance and her anger made the cultivators in the God realm somewhat fearful. Divine Emperor, how did you? Some of the cultivators present naturally knew Feng Go. When they saw that the almighty former God monarch, who had once created countless legends in the God world, had actually come back to life in his own tomb, they couldn't help but feel shocked. However, Feng Ji's current spiritual form made everyone unable to guess what was going on. Feng Ji's brows sunk as her gaze swept across the ground indifferently. There are rumors in the outer realm that the secret of the Divine Phoenix's inheritance is hidden in the Divine Emperor's tomb, as well as the divine weapons and weapons that I used when I was alive. She raised her hand gently. Her flame-like red sleeves floated like flowing clouds. Sharp, profound light was released from Feng Ji's body. It was as if it was going to devour everything in its surroundings. All of you have tried so hard to find this emperor's tomb. Isn't it all for those things? Feng Gu chuckled softly and her tone was cold. So, when you sensed the aura of my tomb, you were able to rush over so quickly, isn't it? Everyone was speechless for a moment. Ever since the Divine Emperor passed away, the legend of the Divine Emperor had been circulating for a long time. But these rumors only made people respectfully praise a few words when mentioning the Feng family or the acting xuanhuan. The turning point happened 16 years ago. Not knowing where it came from, as long as they found the Divine Emperor's tomb and obtained the Divine Phoenix's inheritance and the divine weapon used by the Divine Emperor, he would be able to inherit the Divine Emperor's position and become the next Divine Emperor, the true Emperor of Divine Emperors. After all, no matter how high the status of Feng Liqiong and the Feng family was in the God realm, an acting Divine Emperor was, after all, an acting Divine Emperor. What they wanted more was to become the real, legitimate Divine Emperors. Maps of the Divine Emperor's tomb began to circulate throughout the otherworld. This caused countless people to have all sorts of wild and fanciful thoughts about Daicha. The secret at the bottom of her heart was bluntly brought out by Feng Gu, the person involved. Everyone blushed and felt somewhat embarrassed. Feng Ji's brows narrowed slightly as he shot out a sharp and dangerous glare. My daughter? Feng family's eldest sister Feng Qing Luo, she has already completely inherited God Emperor's inheritance, and has also obtained the recognition of the inheritance as the designated successor to God Emperor. Then, she should be the rightful Empress of Divine Emperors. Feng Ji's words smashed down forcefully. The hearts of the crowd also felt as if they had been ruthlessly cut by a knife. At the same time, Patriarch Feng and Dmo Xian exchanged glances and immediately pushed Yiqing Luo towards Feng Ji's direction lightly. The young lady stood beside Feng Gu. Two faces that were 70% similar looked at each other. Feng Gu smiled sweetly at Yiqing Luo and asked in a warm voice, "Nervous?" Chapter 5166. Feng Ji's beautiful eyes were filled with gentleness and encouragement. Yiqing Luo's curly long eyelashes fluttered like butterfly wings. Their eyes met for a moment and her pink lips curled into a faint smile. With mother around, I'm not afraid of anything. She knew clearly what her grandfather and Xian meant. Her mother was already standing in front, creating a momentum for her. She would have to depend on herself for the rest, if she wanted to help her mother to manage the God realm properly. This step was the first step that she had to take personally. The expression on her face was more calm and composed. Her long and narrow eyes were filled with laziness and casualness. His casual attitude and the smile at the corner of his lips carried a profound meaning. It made the young lady feel even more mysterious. Yiqing Luo faced the crowd, her peach-red dress fluttered. I am Feng family's eldest sister Feng Qing Luo, and also the acknowledged successor of the God Emperor's inheritance. She raised her hand and her slender fingers brushed past her exquisite and alluring face. The cherry blossom totem in front of his forehead shone with a dazzling light. Her fingers squatted on the totem on her forehead as she pointed lightly, no matter whether you accept it or not, my God Emperor's imprint is the best proof. I am the successor of the God Emperor, your current God Emperor. She raised her chin slightly as the devouring flame fan in her hands lightly tapped. At the same time, roar, clang, howl, hiss, a few deafening beast roars reverberated through the entire sky. The crowd had yet to regain their senses from the deafening roar, which was like a beating drum. The sky suddenly turned black. Following that, a dazzling green light covered the entire sky. Howl, the majestic dragon roar caused the entire Devil Destruction Mountain to quake. The crowd raised their heads in shock. They saw a huge green dragon hovering beside them. The dragon's body was huge as it covered the sky. Pieces of dragon scales were like solid armor, sparkling brightly. Dragon. Green dragon? The surrounding crowd looked in disbelief at the sudden appearance of the azure dragon. They naturally recognized it. Wasn't this one of the 4 sacred beasts that the former god emperor had a contract with, the green dragon sacred beast? Remember? After the death of the former divine emperor, how many people were fighting to find the 4 great sacred beasts and form a contract with the one and only sacred beasts in this world? However, the 4 sacred beasts seemed to have disappeared from the world along with the former divine emperor. As time went by, people began to forget about these 4 holy beasts, who had once fought alongside the former divine emperor, and were his greatest helpers. He only treated it as a biography within a biography. Unexpectedly, the former divine emperor had been resurrected from the grave. The azure dragon also appeared. Did the former emperor of the divine emperor summon azure dragon to cheer up his daughter? Look at the azure dragon's back. Suddenly, someone with sharp eyes saw that there was a dragon wrapped around the back of the azure dragon. The color of the dragon's scales was extremely complicated, like a leopard's pattern. At this moment, it was shaking its head and looking at them with a pair of cute, watery and innocent dragon eyes. That was the son of the green dragon? Just as everyone was looking at the azure dragon in shock, suddenly, a shrill bird cry rang out. Following that, everyone felt the surrounding air become scorching hot as if it was on fire. The sky that was enveloped by the green light was covered with a red glow. It was as if the sky was on fire. In the next instant, everyone saw that from the gap where the azure dragon was circling, a fiery red vermilion bird that was even more noble and elegant than the phoenix emerged. In addition, the relationship between the Jiang nobles and the Palace of Gloomy Shadows had been exposed. The Jiang family's patriarch naturally wouldn't allow Feng Gu to set the pace and let everyone accept Yi Qing Luo's existence as the new sovereign of gods. He used his profound energy to amplify his voice to every corner of Devil Destruction Mountain. Your Feng family has been in power in the divine realm for many years. Even after the death of the former divine emperor, you didn't intend to hand over the position of divine emperor. You even let the heir of your Feng family become the acting divine emperor. What? Only those who receive the divine emperor's inheritance can become the divine emperor. Then, the acting divine emperor doesn't seem to be the one recognized by the divine emperor's inheritance, right? However, he has been in control of the god realm for such a long time. Now, another daughter of the former Xuanhuan emperor will become the new Xuanhuan emperor. Your Feng family's ambition is really big. Patriarch Zhang's words weren't very clear, but it expressed a lot of meaning. Feng family's ambition was broad and they were bent on controlling the divine realm. Their motive was absolutely not simple. Chapter 5168. And the last sentence, withdraw the daughter of a former divine emperor. This sentence could completely trigger countless guesses from the crowd. Could it be that this former divine emperor's daughter was a fake? All of this was Feng family's scheme? Just to become the emperor of the divine emperors justifiably? If that was the case, then Feng family's table manners were too disgusting. Former divine emperor's daughter, even if you summon the 4 sacred beasts to support her, it's still not enough to convince us. A woman who appeared out of nowhere, what right does she have to take charge of the divine realm? After Patriarch Jiang let everyone fantasize for a while, he opened his mouth again. If I'm not wrong, this young lady doesn't seem to be from the divine realm, but someone from the lower realm. His gaze pointed directly at Feng Liqiong. It seems, the acting divine emperor used his divine emperor's name to bring her to the divine realm privately, right? After Patriarch Jiang said this, not only the divine realm was in an uproar. Even the people from the devil's domain were shocked. Not someone from the divine realm but someone from the lower realm? Those lowly cultivators from the lower realm, how could they be qualified to come to the divine realm and even dream of becoming the divine emperor? This was spread out. The divine realm would probably become a joke. Patriarch Jiang was very satisfied to see the impact of his words on the crowd. His sinister eyes narrowed slightly, his lips hooked up with a sneer, and continued to drive the crowd's emotions. Patriarch Feng, we respect your Feng family for possessing the inheritance of the divine phoenix, and have always allowed your Feng family to do whatever you want in the divine realm. Now, you actually found a young lady from the lower realm, to let her inherit the divine emperor's position. Have you ever thought about whether we are willing? Patriarch Feng's face immediately darkened, as he stared fiercely at Patriarch Jiang. Patriarch Feng couldn't refute Patriarch Jiang's point at all. Yiqing Luo was indeed someone from the lower realm. Before this, Yiqing Luo indeed did not have the qualifications to stand on the divine realm's territory. Whether Yiqing Luo really inherited the divine emperor's legacy or not, she was someone from the lower realm. This point, it was unacceptable. The Jiang family's aristocratic family's plan was brilliant. Yiqing Luo's long and narrow eyes slanted as her gaze swept across the Jiang family's aristocrats. It seemed that the head of the Jiang family had also gotten some information about her from the Palace of Darkness. He was making use of the fact that she was from the lower world as a point of attack. It really was, no one could refute that. Yiqing Luo caressed the stray hairs by the side of her face as she took large strides towards the direction of the three sacred beasts. Her steps were light and slow, neither too fast nor too slow. As her dress fluttered in the wind, it was like a blossoming peach blossom, absolutely stunning. The nobleman of the Jiang clan snorted coldly, "Big Sister Feng, you're from the lower realm. Appearing in the immortal realm is already the most lenient thing you can do. Yet you still want to become the emperor of the divine emperors? Don't think that you can hide the fact that you are from the lower realm just by borrowing the sacred beast of the former divine emperor. Those same beasts are not something that a person from a lower realm like you can approach. Sacred beasts were arrogant by nature. Apart from contractors, he basically didn't like anyone else. Even the contestants' relatives were the same. Some of the people present had heard that 10,000 years ago, that was when the four great sacred beasts were still around. Even if it was Patriarch Feng or Feng Liqiong, the sacred beasts might not give them a good look. This lowly person from the lower realm. How dare she get close to the four great sacred beasts? She really wanted to make use of the sacred beasts to stabilize her position as the divine emperor. She must be crazy. Chapter 5169. Yiqing Luo didn't bother about him. She didn't even cast a glance at Patriarch Jiang's direction. That obvious attitude of not putting him in her eyes made Patriarch Jiang's expression sunk. He sneered as he continued to ridicule, "Former Emperor of God, you'd better keep your sacred beast back. If your daughter who came from the lower realm, you'll feel heartache. After all, the cultivators from the lower realm are lowly and lowly. If she were to be shocked by the sacred beast's might, this daughter of yours who had finally returned to your side would be gone." Patriarch Jiang's words seemed to be reminding Feng Ge. However, the sarcasm in his tone and words was extremely obvious. Feng Ge didn't bother about Patriarch Jiang's intention as her gaze followed Yiqing Luo's direction towards the sacred beast. Her gaze followed closely without blinking, as though she was worried about Yiqing Luo. When Patriarch Jiang saw that, he assumed that Feng Ge had listened to his words as he smiled even more complacently. "Former Emperor of God, now isn't the time to show off. You'd better summon the sacred beast back." "Who told you that the sacred beast is this empress's battle pet?" Feng Ge seemed to be annoyed by the commotion as her exquisite beautiful eyes creased slightly as she shot an impatient glance at Patriarch Jiang. Patriarch Jiang went into a blank as he didn't quite understand the meaning of Feng Ge's words. Feng Ge's red lips curved as she gave a sarcastic and proud smile. "Patriarch Jiang, this empress has already passed away 10,000 years ago, and before that, this empress had already terminated the contract with the four sacred beasts." The meaning of her words. She and the sacred beasts had nothing to do with each other. Those sacred beasts' arrival wasn't summoned by her. It had nothing to do with Feng Ge. Where did those sacred beasts come from? Patriarch Jiang was stunned for a moment as he quickly regained his senses as he looked towards the direction where the sacred beasts were heading. Suddenly, a gloomy ridicule flashed past his eyes as he suddenly opened his mouth. "Former Emperor of God, since the four sacred beasts had already terminated the contract with you, then you still allow Sister Feng to get close to the sacred beasts? Sacred beasts' temperament is unpredictable and Sister Feng is already in danger when she gets close to them, not to mention that these sacred beasts have nothing to do with former Emperor of God. I'm afraid Sister Feng doesn't even know about this. Is this the so-called lifting a rock only to smash one's own foot? Initially, I wanted to make use of the holy beast's might to build momentum, but now I even have to pay with my life. Ah. Jiang clan head's tone was full of sarcasm. At this moment, Yiqing Luo was getting closer and closer to the three sacred beasts. It was so close that as long as the three holy beasts raised their heads slightly and breathed out, he could probably throw her to the ground. Yiqing Luo had no way to advance, no way to retreat, only death awaited her. Clan Lord Jiang was filled with such thoughts. Suddenly, a tyrannical and ferocious beast roar shook the entire Devil Destruction Mountain. It was the roar of a beast. It caused one's eardrums to expand and one's chest to tremble. Pah! Everyone saw a snow-white, huge tiger lying horizontally in front of Yiqing Luo. That white tiger was huge. Yiqing Luo stood in front of the white tiger. It was only as tall as the white tiger's claws. The white tiger, sacred beast of the four great sacred beasts. Everyone exclaimed in surprise. The four sacred beasts were all gathered here. They could actually see the four great sacred beasts alive. This was practically a lifetime series. Everyone went crazy as they kept on exclaiming and exclaiming in admiration. All of them stared greedily at the four great sacred beasts. They couldn't wait to contract these four sacred beasts and become their own battle pets. Chapter 5170. They had clearly heard Patriarch Zhang's words just now. 10,000 years ago. These four unique sacred beasts had already terminated the contract with the former Emperor God. This also meant that everyone present had the opportunity to form a contract with the four great sacred beasts. They didn't request to be like the former Emperor God, to contract all four sacred beasts. They only wanted one. As long as it was just one, he would be willing. The crowd's attention was all on the four sacred beasts. Those forces led by the Jiang family's aristocrats were also looking at the sacred beasts excitedly. But the reason why they were excited wasn't because they could contract the four sacred beasts, but because Yiqing Luo couldn't live on any longer. Patriarch Jiang couldn't help but burst out laughing. Laughing at Yiqing Luo's stupidity, that elder sister Feng was extremely stupid. In order to borrow the sacred beast's might to build momentum, she took the initiative to get close to the sacred beasts. Now, the white tiger's sacred beast had appeared. That elder sister Feng had been completely surrounded by the four sacred beasts. Based on the four sacred beasts' unyielding character, Feng Qing Luo couldn't escape death. Patriarch Jiang was filled with this thought as he scrutinized, and even the ridiculing words had flashed past his mind. But let Patriarch Jiang know, it was a scene which made everyone shocked and dumbstruck. It appeared. That huge white tiger sacred beast which was lying horizontally in front of Yiqing Luo didn't raise its tiger claws to slash Yiqing Luo into two halves like what everyone had guessed. Instead, it slowly lowered its sacred beast's prestige towards Yiqing Luo's direction. It automatically sent its furry head into Yiqing Luo's hand. That intimate gesture. Anyone could see that. This wasn't the end. The more exciting scene was still ongoing. That azure dragon sacred beast which was hovering in the sky slowly lowered its body. The vermilion bird sacred beast which was flying around arrogantly in the sky flaunted its beautiful phoenix feathers as it flew towards Yiqing Luo. Even that black tortoise sacred beast which was too lazy to move also rolled its hard outer shell as it got closer to Yiqing Luo. Then, for completely different but equally dignified voices rang out, "Master." They called out in unison, shaking everyone's heart. Everyone was stunned for a moment. Following that, he gasped in disbelief. Wait a minute, were they seeing things? Then, the legendary and invincible four great sacred beasts had actually called him Master? Where was his dignity and pride as a sacred beast? No, that's not right. That's not the point. The main point was, the direction that the four sacred beasts were facing was Feng family's eldest sister, that Feng Qing Luo who was rumored to have inherited God Emperor's inheritance. The four sacred beasts actually let her form a contract with them? As soon as this news came out, everyone was boiling with excitement. How could he believe it? Everyone was so greedy that the four great saint beasts, which would be a cause for celebration, actually submitted to a girl? Back then, even Feng Ge might not have been able to be addressed as master. They could not understand why the four great sacred beasts would form a contract with a girl. No one would doubt the authenticity of the contract between Yiqing Luo and the sacred beast. Because of the pride of a holy beast. It was impossible for him to cooperate with Yiqing Luo's act just because of Feng Ji's instruction. Therefore, that lowly young lady who came from a low-leveled plane. She had really formed a contract with four great saint beasts. Chapter 5171. Those four sacred beasts surrounded the young lady with an intimate and harmonious look. It was like a heavy slap on Jiang family's patriarch's face. This was a complete slap on his face. Perhaps no one in the crowd had expected this. The rumored four great sacred beasts were contracted by a young lady from the lower realm. Facing everyone's shocked and complicated gazes, Yiqing Luo totally didn't pay any attention to it. Her vision was fixed on these few companions in front of her. Her long and narrow eyes were slightly curved as it gave a gentle arc. She stretched out her hand and touched the four companions as the smile on her pink lips deepened. "You're finally out." Ever since they came to the Devil region, she couldn't sense the presence of the pet space. To these few adorable beasts, she missed them very much. Chi-Chi's huge head rubbed against Yiqing Luo. One head had already covered the young lady. The huge creature's voice was very soft. Master, Chi-Chi missed you so much. You stinky tiger, hurry up and get out of the way. Let me see if Master has become ugly again." This arrogant voice was obviously Qi Yan. "Is Master all right?" This gentle young man's voice was obviously Black Tortoise Xianxia. "I didn't expect, you lass, to inherit the God Emperor's power." This steady voice was obviously Azure Dragon. The Azure Dragon's whiskers fluttered as it lamented, "We were suddenly sealed in the pet dimension. We couldn't leave and we couldn't get in touch with you. Just now, a sudden surge of energy broke the barrier between us, and we were able to come out of the pet dimension." Azure Dragon's huge eyes had already seen the surrounding environment and immediately understood what had happened. And it was precisely because of this. Earlier after they appeared, it was to create momentum for their own master. The sacred beast's might was majestic and sharp, as well as a huge pressure oppressing the crowd's nerves. Yiqing Luo flipped over and leapt onto Chi-Chi's back. On the huge white tiger, there was a scorching flame which was extremely obvious. After that, Chi-Chi started to move and walked back towards the direction where Feng family's patriarch and the rest were. As for the other three sacred beasts, they were like the most loyal guardians, firmly following behind Chi-Chi, who was also Yiqing Luo's back. That imposing manner was like a rainbow. That mighty and domineering. This scene was reflected in everyone's eyes. He would probably not be able to forget this scene for the next few decades. All the way back to Feng Clan Master's side. The originally magnificent cemetery that had now collapsed into ruins was the center of it all. It was as if he was covered in frost, and the cold intent spread out in all directions. Yiqing Luo sat leisurely on the back of the white tiger. Her eyes were calm, but there was a sense of foreboding chill. The appearance of the four great saint beasts. It was exactly what she needed right now. She must do it before her mother loses all of her strength. Fulfill Nyangqing's expectations. The imposing manner between Yiqing Luo's brows grew stronger and stronger. A voice as cold as ice rang out from all directions. "If I'm not qualified to inherit the throne of the Divine Emperor, then, who is?" The girl's long and narrow eyes were filled with a mocking smile. Even though they were far away, she could still accurately fix her gaze on the Jiang clan's patriarch. She sneered, "You?" Without waiting for Patriarch Jiang to respond, Yiqing Luo indifferently sneered and ridiculed, "But, on what basis? You and my Feng family have been in charge of the God realm for so many years. That's because we have this qualification. And the reason why I can inherit the throne of the Divine Emperor is because of the Feng family's blood flowing in my body, so I can obtain the recognition of the Divine Emperor's inheritance." Chapter 5172. When Yiqing Luo reached this point, she paused slightly. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, adding a sense of mockery and mockery. She tilted her head and fixed her teasing eyes on Patriarch Jiang. She said sarcastically, "If Patriarch Jiang really wanted to be a divine emperor, why didn't you try to get the inheritance of a divine emperor after so many years?" Jiang family master's face was livid with anger. "Isn't this because of your Feng family's selfishness? He hid the inheritance of the divine emperor in the tomb of the former divine emperor. How can we get the inheritance of the divine emperor?" Yiqing Luo clicked her tongue, spread out her hands and sighed helplessly. "So, it's because you don't have the ability." The head of the Jiang clan was exasperated. Yiqing Luo interrupted again. "The divine emperor's inheritance is controlled by our Feng family. This is our strength, our qualification, and you, Jiang family and even other aristocrats, can't get the qualification of the divine emperor's inheritance, nor can you find the whereabouts of the divine emperor's inheritance. That is your incompetence. All of you are weak and incompetent. Why should I be the scapegoat?" Yi Qing Luo's sentence after sentence was totally stabbing a knife into Patriarch Zhang's heart. Following that, Yi Qing Luo slowly stood up on Chi-Chi's back. The young girl in a pink dress on the back of the huge white tiger was very eye-catching. The aura that the young girl released bit by bit overlapped with the might of the holy beast. The atmosphere of the entire Devil Destruction Mountain had sunk into a strange and stagnant atmosphere that made it difficult for people to breathe. I found the Divine Emperor's tomb, obtained the Divine Emperor's inheritance, and inherited the Divine Emperor's inheritance. The girl enunciated each word clearly. This is my qualification. Yi Qing Luo's eyes narrowed slightly. A sharp cold light swept across everyone. Do you still have any objections? These simple words came out of his mouth. The girl's tone was also extremely casual. However, it caused everyone to feel an indescribable fear in their hearts. Especially, just a few breaths after the young girl finished speaking, the four saint beasts began to move. He growled at them in warning. The warning was too obvious. The Devil Destruction Mountain quietened down. How could anyone dare to object? There was no way he could refute Yi Qing Luo's words. It doesn't matter what you think, and it doesn't matter whether you are willing or not. My Feng family will be a phoenix for 10,000 years. From today onwards. Feng family's descendant Feng Qing Luo. It's the new divine phoenix of the God realm. The girl's words were unquestionable. It was very intimidating. The people from the divine world simply had no room to refute. After intimidating that group of people, Yi Qing Luo had no intention to waste any more time. With a wave of his hand, he dismissed the onlookers. The people surrounding them naturally refused to leave. Even if he could not obtain the inheritance of the Divine Emperor, even if he could not contract a sacred beast, at the very least, I can enter the tomb of the Divine Emperor and get some divine artifacts, right? It should be noted that this was a divine artifact that had been placed in the tomb of the Divine Emperor for tens of thousands of years. Any one of them could set off a gust of wind. However, the four sacred beasts unleashed their might at the same time. All kinds of crazily chasing people away. In the end, it was completely dispersed. Devil Destruction Mountain quietened down. Yi Qing Luo looked at the tomb which had already turned into ruins, and finally her gaze fell onto the increasingly transparent and weak Feng Gu. Her throat tightened as she called out hoarsely, "Mother?" Feng Gu gave a gentle smile as her eyes were filled with joy and encouragement towards Yi Qing Luo. You've done very well to entrust the God realm and the Feng family to you. I'm very assured. New Divine Phoenix, you'll always be the best existence in Mother's heart. Chapter 5173. Yi Qing Luo's eyes were red and her breathing was getting heavier, as though something was blocking her heart. Feng Gu shook her head gently. Don't cry. To be able to see you again, I'm already very content. After that, her gaze went past Yi Qing Luo and looked towards a certain direction behind her. Her smile was even gentler, with a tinge of joy. You're here. Yi Qing Luo was stunned as a figure flashed past her mind. She turned her head and indeed saw Blood Bone Barbaric King. Why was Uncle Bone here at Devil Destruction Mountain? Wasn't he escorting those two people who had disguised themselves as her and Dmo Xian? Blood Bone Barbaric King's gaze was fixed on Feng Gu without blinking. The emotions in his eyes were extremely complicated, making one unable to tell what he was thinking. Until Blood Bone Barbaric King stopped in front of Feng Gu. One person and one spirit, for eyes met. Feng Ji's brows softened as her lips curled into a sweet smile. Gu, it's been hard on you for so long. Blood Bone Barbaric King didn't say a word as his fingers clenched tightly, his entire body tensed up. Feng Gu seemed to have guessed Blood Bone Barbaric King's reaction as she smiled gently. If it wasn't for you, I really don't know what to do. Her eyes drooped and the gentleness in her brows made her exquisite and stunning face look extremely gentle. To be able to see you again, I'm very happy. Blood Bone Barbaric King looked at her without blinking. Their eyes were filled with surging waves that were crazily surging. The lady's sweet smile was reflected in Blood Bone Barbaric King's pupils. After some time, Blood Bone Barbaric King then spoke in a hoarse voice. Regret? These three words seemed to have used up all his strength. Feng Gu raised her eyes, her brows were gentle as she gazed at Blood Bone Barbaric King's handsome face, smiling with some joy and relief. She nodded her head very lightly and said clearly, regret. Blood Bone Barbaric King's pupils shrank abruptly. Feng Ji's smile became even more gentle as she stretched out that slightly transparent hand, stretching out towards Blood Bone Barbaric King across the void. Following that, it tightened bit by bit. It was as if he wanted to hold the barbaric Blood Bone King's hand. After Feng Gu finished this action, she chuckled. If the person I chose was you, how good would that be? Her words were soft. However, his words were clearly heard by the barbaric Bloodbone King. The barbaric Bloodbone King's heart skipped a beat. His heart skipped a few beats. This was his first time. Hearing Feng Ji's positive answer, their feelings for each other deepened. 10,000 years of waiting. Can say this sentence. He was already satisfied. The barbaric Bloodbone King slowly stretched out his hand, wanting to hold Feng Ji's hand. But Feng Gu had already withdrawn his hand. She gave him an extremely beautiful smile. After that, she looked at Yiqing Luo again. Luo, you're luckier than me and smarter than me. Mother knows that he will take good care of you. Her voice grew weaker and weaker. His gaze then looked towards Diamo Xian. My daughter and the Feng family, I'll leave it to you. Mother. Yiqing Luo's heart tightened as she realized something. Diamo Xian's gaze was firm, neither servile nor overbearing. Yes, I will. Feng Gu exchanged a few more words with Patriarch Feng and Feng Liqiong. Finally, his sight fell onto the barbaric Bloodbone King. The barbaric Bloodbone King's hand had been stretched towards her. His hand was trembling visibly. His thin lips trembled as he said word by word, I will protect the people you care about, and the family. Feng Gu suddenly burst into laughter. Chapter 5174. That light laughter rippled in the wind. And it even had an echo. In the laughter there was some relief and lightness. You have always understood me, able to guess all the thoughts in my heart. Feng Gu raised her hand and slowly pressed it on her chest. The smile on her brows became gentler. I am sincere. Perhaps she was indeed very selfish. In the eyes of the Bloodbone Savage King. At this critical juncture she gave him a response. A memory which was enough to make him laugh secretly for the rest of his life. It was hope. He was able to protect Yiqing Luo and take care of the Feng family. But when she said those words, it was not because of this motive. She was sincere. Sincere regret. Sincerely, felt that if the person she had fallen in love with was Agu, all these would not have happened. She would come out. Only hope. She and Agu's relationship did not have any more regrets. Agu had been waiting for her from 10,000 years ago, 10,000 years later. His heart had never changed. And absolutely would not be moved by any other woman. So, she was willing to selfishly say these words which would bring endless shock to Agu, and perhaps it might cause Agu to not see any other woman in the future, came out. The Bloodbone Savage King's pupils constricted suddenly. He looked at Feng Gu in disbelief, watching her actions. Ecstasy gushed up his heart. He suddenly pounced towards Feng Gu, trying to hold her hand. Is what you said true? You really? But before his hand touched Feng Gu, that sweet and gentle smile with a satisfied smile on her face, bit by bit, dissipated in the air. Not a single remnant shadow could be seen. The wind brought the gentle and loving voice of the woman, word by word, was clearly enunciated into everyone's ears. I will use another way to accompany by your side. I will always be here. The Bloodbone Savage King's ecstasy fell heavily at this moment. He stretched out his hand again, grabbing the air. Gur? Gur. But there was no response from that gentle voice. Feng Gu had completely disappeared. Her obsession had been exhausted. The Bloodbone Savage King knelt heavily on the rein. His eyes were lifeless as he supported himself on the ground. His face was filled with disappointment and shock. Mother. Yiqing Luo clenched her fists and buried her head in Diamo Xian's arms. Lin Imo Xian's clothes were soaked in tears. Diamo Xian gently patted her back, silently comforting her. Feng Clan Master slowly turned his back and tears flowed down his face. As for Feng Liqiong, she was bawling like a child. The group of people calmed down. No one mentioned anything about Feng Gu anymore. Yiqing Luo had no intention to leave Devil Extermination Mountain. After she led everyone down the mountain, she asked the demonic hall to send people to set up a few tents at the foot of the mountain as a place to rest. The demonic hall did not agree at first. She didn't expect. The seemingly powerless Mu Yu, who only knew a little about medicine, was actually the daughter of the previous divine emperor, the current divine phoenix. And that seemingly harmless and well-behaved man with azure eyes was the real overlord. Wasn't he just messing with her? It was no wonder that at the wedding in Devil Head City, they could make the nine-tailed fox, the venerable sovereign's great mercy holy beast, so obedient. But, if she rejected? When the overlord's icy cold gaze swept past them, they were all stuck in their throats. The demonic hall sent people over to set up the tents. She stood in front of Yiqing Luo, her cold and elegant face was obviously unhappy. The new divine phoenix wouldn't have forgotten what she had promised me, right? Chapter 5175. Yiqing Luo raised her gaze slightly. She, who had already inherited the divine emperor's legacy, exuded an oppressive aura that no one could look at directly. She gathered her sleeves and looked at the cold face of the Devil Hall. She raised her eyes and said lightly, "Of course I won't forget." Devil Palace stared at Yiqing Luo and sized her up for a while as her beautiful eyes slowly narrowed. "Why did you disguise yourself as another identity to come to the Devil region?" She still couldn't figure it out. As the eldest sister of the Feng family in the God realm, why did she need to hide her identity? He then thought about what she had done in the demonic domain. The demon hall had no choice but to think further. This Feng Qing Luo was sent by the God realm to invade the devil domain? Then if she cooperated with Feng Qing Luo, wouldn't she be helping Feng Qing Luo completely? The demon hall was filled with doubts. But the biggest reason was, in fact she knew it herself. It came from New Rao's jealousy. Especially when she had almost married the overlord, in front of Feng Qing Luo. Even if that Dizun was a fake. Standing in front of the future mistress of the imperial palace whom the overlord had acknowledged, Feng Qing Luo. She always had a kind of, the embarrassment of being so lowly to the point of dust. Yiqing Luo gently caressed Chi-Chi who had turned into a cat in her arms as her gaze was calm. "You don't have to worry, I'm not interested in the devil region." She was very straightforward and had no intention of beating around the bush. "I came to the demon domain purely to see my mother. You should also understand that the gloomy palace is eyeing my mother's tomb covetously. They want to get the location of the godly emperor's tomb from me. If I don't change my appearance, do you think I can inherit the throne so smoothly?" Yiqing Luo's counter-question made the devil palace speechless. The demon hall and gloomy palace were working together. Naturally he understood the style of the abyss palace. With the way Shady Palace did things behind the scenes. She would definitely snatch the opportunity before Feng Qing Luo to barge into the God Emperor's tomb, turning the God Emperor's tomb upside down. The demon hall was silent for a moment. "How do you plan to deal with the palace of gloomy darkness now?" Yiqing Luo had no intention to hide it. The seal behind the secluded palace is at Devil Extermination Mountain. As for the exact location after I find out, I will personally settle this 10,000-year-old grudge. There was no need for her to hide anything. Everything the Devil Hall did was for the sake of the Devil region, for their own ambitions. Right now, on one side was the Dark Palace, which had already been defeated once and was obviously up to no good. The ambition and pride of the Demon Hall would never allow itself to be used by others. On the other hand, it was the new Divine Phoenix who had already inherited the Divine Emperor's inheritance. It represented the entire God realm. There was no need for the Demon Hall to worry that she would take this opportunity to attack the demon domain. After all, she had just taken office and she needed her face. "I can't do such a shameless thing to ruin the reputation of the Feng family." The cold and beautiful eyes of the demon queen flickered with a faint light. After a while, she opened her mouth and said coldly, "Then, I will wait quietly for the new Divine Phoenix's good news. I hope that you will remember our agreement." After that, the Devil Hall didn't say anything else. He turned around and left. Yiqing Luo looked at the departing silhouette of the Devil Hall as her pink lips curled into an undetectable arc. This Devil Hall most probably wasn't as clean as it appeared on the surface. However, as long as it was at this critical juncture. If she didn't stir up any trouble. During this period of time in the Devil region, Yiqing Luo still wanted to maintain a superficial relationship. Chapter 5176. At least it was more convenient for many things. Yiqing Luo retracted her gaze and looked at the surrounding people who were still setting up their tents. She then walked towards the other corner of Devil Destruction Mountain, a more secluded place. But it wasn't too far away from the tents. She intended to stay in Devil Destruction Mountain. To wait for the person behind the scenes of the Palace of Darkness, Huang Wuyo's seal. If she could reseal Huang Wuyo before his seal was lifted, or take the opportunity to eliminate him, then everyone would be happy. But before this, Yiqing Luo had persuaded Patriarch Feng to return. After all, there was still Feng Shi's friend in the Feng family. If the Palace of Darkness took the opportunity to play some despicable tricks, her weakness would be pinched. Patriarch Feng thought of Feng Shi and the hostage of the Palace of Darkness, Princess Ling Long. He endured the pain of losing Feng Gu and his worry for Yiqing Luo as he left the Devil region. But Feng Liqiong refused to leave no matter what. He knew what Feng Ji's wish was. So he wanted to stay and help Yiqing Luo to fulfill Feng Ji's wish. Yiqing Luo knew that Feng Liqiong was repenting, feeling ashamed that her obsession with Feng Gu had distorted her thinking and caused her to do so many wrong things. Yiqing Luo didn't stop her. But because Feng Gu had completely disappeared from this world. Feng Liqiong couldn't control her emotions at all, so she went off alone to ease her grief. So did Barbaric Blood King. As for Dmo Xian, he summoned the disciples of Dragon Scale Palace and started to search around Devil Destruction Mountain. For the real place where Huangwuyo was sealed. Which meant? Now, other than the guards who were setting up the tents, there was only Yiqing Luo alone. When Yiqing Luo walked to a secluded corner, she flipped over and climbed up a big tree. Her back leaned against the tree trunk as she bent one knee and placed one hand on it. His other leg was dangling leisurely, swinging back and forth. Her slender fingers lightly tapped on the tree trunk twice as she spoke in a casual tone. How long do you intend to follow me secretly? Haven't you enjoyed the show? The young lady's voice was slightly hoarse, but it was full of majesty. A figure suddenly appeared. With a lightning speed, it appeared in front of Yiqing Luo in a blink of an eye. The thick and solid tree trunk carried the weight of 2 people. And because of this sudden weight, it kept swaying. Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased as her voice became heavier. Men and women should not touch each other. Step down. That figure was still crouching in front of her. A pair of eyes that seemed to be filled with bloodlust and slaughter at this moment, had an inexplicable and cold smile that was filled with killing intent. He stared at her without blinking. Yiqing Luo's hair stood on end from his stare as she raised her hand and gave a tight slap to the face in front of her. Before he could slap the other party's face, her wrist was held by someone. The icy cold touch made Yiqing Luo couldn't help but shiver. Damn girl, you dare to play tricks on me? The man's voice was low and cold, and it sounded like he was gnashing his teeth. Yiqing Luo struggled against his hand. I can't stand the yin qi on your body, let go and get down. The man frowned and tightened his grip on the girl's wrist. That icy cold bloodthirsty gaze was fixated on Yiqing Luo for several breaths. Suddenly his sleeves fluttered as he landed under the tree. Yiqing Luo turned her head and looked at him from this angle. Lord Demon Dragon, the deal between us has already ended, why are you still looking for me? Yes. The black-robed man in front of him was like an Azura from hell. He was the Demon Dragon King Long Ao. Chapter 5177. Long Ao's entire body was gloomy, and his entire body was filled with bloody killing intent. It did look quite scary. Yiqing Luo totally didn't dare to guess what he had done to harm Li before he was sealed, which made him look so gloomy. Obviously, he was just a hot-tempered fool who would resort to violence at the slightest disagreement. However, he had forcefully turned into a tyrant. Back in the tomb of the Divine Emperor, she made a deal with Long Ao. She lifted the seal on Long Ao, and Long Ao took her to the real tomb of the Divine Emperor. At that time she hadn't truly unlocked Long Ao's seal. However, he still secretly made some movements that Long Ao wasn't aware of. About 4 hours later, Long Ao's seal would naturally be lifted. And now it was time for Long Ao's seal to be lifted. Yiqing Luo had guessed that Long Ao would come to settle the score with her, but she had not expected that. It would be so fast. Why did I look for you? You still have the guts to ask? Long Ao's tone was icy cold, as if a bone-piercing chill pierced into Yiqing Luo's skin. Yiqing Luo's expression remained unchanged as she continued to tilt her head and smiled sweetly. How would I know if you're not here? Long Ao's entire body's yin qi wreaked havoc as it entangled towards Yiqing Luo. Alright, remove the seal for this seat. How dare you abandon this seat? Yiqing Luo's pink lips curled upwards as she replied seriously. Aren't you already out now? Long Ao. Was coming out now the main point? Most importantly, she had lied to him before this. Long Ao expressed that he was completely unable to accept it. He had lived for tens of thousands of years, but he was actually being played by a girl like this. I've already stayed here for more than 10,000 years. Do you really need another 4 hours? Yiqing Luo's slender fingers touched her chin. Anyway, the ending is that you've already unlocked the seal and regained your freedom. That's enough, isn't it? Long Ao. He actually felt that it made sense. Long Ao retracted his yin qi and jumped onto a tree beside Yiqing Luo. Now that you've regained your freedom, why did you come looking for me? Yiqing Luo turned her head over to look at him. You've already unlocked the seal, so my vast aqua god relic to you isn't of much use. Long Ao had a gloomy expression on his face. He then said in a deadly earnest manner, This lord has been sealed by that woman Feng Gu for so long. So, I have long been disconnected from this world. I only know you, so of course I have to follow you. Yiqing Luo raised her brows. I don't seem to be very familiar with you. She paused and reminded him, before this, you wanted to take my life. Long Ao waved his hand. Aren't you still alive? Do you need to harp on this trivial matter over and over again? Therefore, was it his fault that she didn't die because of him? Yiqing Luo was so angry that she laughed. She was not interested in having this unpredictable time bomb by her side. What if it blew up for no reason? Wouldn't she vomit to death? He probably saw through Yiqing Luo's rejection. Long Ao leaned against the tree with the attitude of a big boss. His tone was sinister and carried a tinge of complacency. Listen, you are looking for the monster that was sealed by that woman in the Devil Destruction Mountain. Yiqing Luo originally didn't intend to bother about him. But after hearing this sentence, her expression changed slightly as her gaze congealed. You know about it? The monster in Long Ao's words was probably referring to Huang Wuyo. In the eyes of the Devil Dragon King like Long Ao, Huang Wuyo had become a monster. That Huang Wuyo, what was his identity? Chapter 5178. Of course this seat knows. Long Ao gave a sinister smile. In this world there's nothing that this seat doesn't know. Yiqing Luo retorted coldly. Then why don't you know that you'll be sealed by my mother? Long Ao. The rampaging Yinchi surged once again. Long Ao looked rather flustered and exasperated. Alright, if you don't want to know where that monster is sealed then forget it, this seat will go myself. Yiqing Luo. He was still acting like a tsundere. This Long Ao, why did his name and his aura totally not match? Where's the cool and aloof Azura from hell who was filled with killing intent? She felt. Her Uncle Bone was probably more worthy of the name Long Ao. Yiqing Luo straightened her body as she turned sideways to look at him. Will you be so kind? This Long Ao wasn't evil, but he was absolutely not a righteous person. Everything depended on his mood. Yiqing Luo didn't feel that Long Ao was purely out of touch with the world and wanted to pester her. Perhaps. This Long Ao was harboring the thought of taking revenge on Feng Gu? Perhaps. When he brought her to the place where Huang Wuyo was sealed. Then in front of her he would release Huang Wuyo's seal. Yiqing Luo believed. Long Ao, this bastard, would never do such a stupid thing. Yiqing Luo didn't conceal his suspicions. So infuriated that Long Ao's sinister aura started to sweep around. He flicked his black robe as he leapt down from the tree. Believe it or not, it's up to you. The wide black robe was like a black fog as it rolled down, forming a cold arc in the air. In a blink of an eye he disappeared in front of Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo's face didn't reveal much emotions. She curled her lips very lightly as her legs dangled in mid-air. With a delicate young lady's look she sighed softly. Tisk, I just wanted to agree to him and he left, forget it, forget it. Swoosh, in the air there was the sound of clothes brushing past. Immediately following that, the tree which Yiqing Luo was on shook violently. That man dressed in black robe, who was filled with an austere aura, appeared once again in front of Yiqing Luo. He squatted on the tree trunk and pressed his hands beside his feet, like a dog sitting. That pair of dark and sinister eyes stared at Yiqing Luo, his face filled with an awkward and gloomy expression. This seat will give you one more chance. Do you want to find that monster's territory or not? This time round Yiqing Luo didn't tease Long Ao anymore. This Long Ao's brain doesn't seem to be working very well at present. Moreover, he looks like a bloody murderer. But he looks like a clown. But, no matter how amusing a person was, there was still a bottom line. Long Ao had already bowed his head once. If she didn't let go, she was afraid that Long Ao wouldn't care about her anymore. Now, only Long Ao could find the place where Huang Wuyo was sealed. Let's go. What are you waiting for? Long Ao saw that the girl was still sitting in the same place. He couldn't help but urge her. Yiqing Luo replied, wait for my uncle and Uncle Gu to come back, then we'll. Finding a territory is so troublesome. To think that you're that girl-roused daughter, so timid and useless. Long Ao didn't wait for Yiqing Luo to finish her sentence as he gave a look of disdain. He glanced sideways at Yiqing Luo. Why? Are you afraid that this seat has no way to protect you? Yiqing Luo. She totally didn't expect him to protect her? If he could stop scheming against her in the dark, she would be thankful, all right. Chapter 5179. Furthermore, his tone was filled with disdain. What was he trying to do? This was called vigilance. This was called using one's brain. But Long Ao had an impatient look, with a, "Go if you want, I can't be bothered to wait on you" expression. Yiqing Luo muttered to herself for some time before summoning Azure Dragon's son, Shiju. Yiqing Luo stroked Shiju's head, making it wait for Blood-Bone Barbaric King and Feng Liqiong's arrival. Then she told them about this matter. Shiju seemed to have successfully evolved into a leopard dragon. Leopard dragon was actually a collective term. Currently, Shiju's original body was a huge dragon, but the dragon scales on its body were like leopard prints. Especially since Shiju not only possessed the dragon skills, it also possessed the leopard skills. It was simply an invincible combination. Most importantly, Shiju could smoothly interact with other humans now. This was the most important reason why Yiqing Luo kept it. The other reason was for safety. Although Shiju had advanced, it was still a dragon. But a young child was after all a young child. Shiju was the most suitable one among her war pets. If any accident happened while heading towards Huang Wuyo's sealed grounds, it would be terrible. Furthermore, Shiju had signed a contract with her. Shiju could sense her location. It could also bring Blood-Bone Barbaric King and Feng Liqiong to follow her aura to look for her. Shiju obediently rubbed against Yiqing Luo's palm and headed towards the foot of Devil Destruction Mountain, towards the direction where the tent was set up. Seeing Shiju's figure disappearing, Yiqing Luo then leapt down from the tree as her pink dress fluttered in the wind. When she landed stably on the ground, her dress fluttered like peach blossoms in full bloom, extremely beautiful. She squinted at Long Ao. "All right, let's go." Troublesome. Long Ao curled his lips as he spat out two words eerily. Following that, his black robe fluttered as he headed towards Devil Destruction Mountain. Yiqing Luo followed closely. Long Ao's speed was extremely fast. Even with Yiqing Luo's agility, she needed to be extremely serious before she could keep up. It showed that Long Ao's true ability had far exceeded her current understanding. Yiqing Luo wasn't sure. If Long Ao displayed a little more ability, under the premise that she didn't need to rely on the blink movement, would she be able to catch up to Long Ao? Yiqing Luo suppressed the suspicions she had towards Long Ao and didn't think too much about it. As long as he could grasp Long Ao's mind. Even if she couldn't make Long Ao help her. At the very least they couldn't become enemies. However, she was afraid that Long Ao was teasing her by leading this path, right? Was he bringing her around the Devil Destruction Mountain? They had already circled around Devil Destruction Mountain by more than one round. Long Ao didn't seem to have any intention of stopping. Yiqing Luo was contemplating if she should call out to Long Ao, to have a good talk with him about the principles of life. At this moment, Long Ao's footsteps suddenly halted as he raised his palm and struck down towards Yiqing Luo. Wow 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 wow. Yiqing Luo almost cursed out loud, her fingers raised and the glower flame fan opened up, ready to strike back. That ghastly cold wind from his palm brushed past Yiqing Luo's side, as it crashed onto a big tree behind her. Rumble. There was a deafening collapse. The tree fell down with a loud bang and a deep pit was formed in the ground. Yiqing Luo, so that palm was not meant for her. Then, what was the meaning of him hitting a tree? Was he trying to show off his might? Yiqing Luo turned her head as she looked at that huge deep pit. Just as she was about to open her mouth, her peripheral vision suddenly swept. At the deep pit where the big tree had collapsed, a flight of stairs could be faintly seen extending down along the deep pit. Chapter 5180. That was Underground Passage. Yiqing Luo's starry pupils contracted slightly as she was shocked and pleasantly surprised. Behind her, a chilly voice broke her surprise. "Feng family's lass, what are you trying to do?" That sinister, chilly voice seemed to be wrapped with the world's most intense malice. Yiqing Luo thought of her earlier actions as she turned her head away awkwardly. Long Ao's gaze was filled with ridicule and disdain as he stared at her opened glower flame fan. Her stance was as though she was going to have a fight with him. Yiqing Luo's mind spun quickly and just as Long Ao was about to open his mouth again, she cut off his words with a flowery smile. I'm feeling a little hot, so I'm fanning." Saying that, she waved the glower flame fan and fanned herself twice. Luckily her weapon was a fan. If it was a huge machete, could it be that she had to explain that she was lifting weights? She simply didn't dare to think about it. Long Ao snorted coldly and couldn't be bothered to haggle with her. "It better be like this." Finishing his words, he walked past Yiqing Luo and directly headed towards that underground passage. The pitch-black pit was pitch black as far as the eye could see. She could only vaguely see the long staircase which was hidden in the darkness. Long Ao had already walked in. She had walked all the way here. Yiqing Luo naturally didn't have any hesitation. She lifted her feet and followed Long Ao in. The moment she stepped on the staircase, Yiqing Luo only felt a bone-piercing, dense yin-chi rushing towards her. This yin-chi. It was different from Long Ao's body. Long Ao's entire body was emitting a kind of extremely aggressive, malicious yin-chi, as if he wanted to kill her at any time. But this yin-chi was the kind of yin-chi that made one's hair stand on end from the depths of one's heart. It was as though someone was in the dark, eyeing her covetously. It made her hair stand on end. There was a feeling that her inner heart was being peeped at. Whereas in front was a stretch of boundless darkness, a darkness without a single bit of light. Yiqing Luo could only rely on the sound of Long Ao's steps on the staircase to differentiate his position. How did you know that there's an underground passage here? Yiqing Luo followed her intuition and asked as she walked down. Long Ao was only 2 or 3 steps away from her. His voice seemed even more gloomy and cold in the darkness. Do you think that I'm a fool like you? Do you think that you can't find a place even after looking for a long time? Have you forgotten why I became the one who opened the door of the Divine Emperor's tomb? Yi Fuqian sneered without holding back. For, seal the entrance of the Divine Emperor's tomb and seal the aura of the tomb. As for Huang Wuyo, he was sealed here by Fenggu. The reason why Fenggu built the Divine Emperor's tomb here was to suppress Huang Wuyo. Therefore, how could Long Ao not know where Huang Wuyo was sealed? She had asked a stupid question. What do you want to do after you find the place of that monster? Long Ao suddenly retracted his mocking attitude and asked in a casual manner. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes but didn't reply. Long Ao continued, Don't tell me that you want to reseal that monster for your mother? I can't? Yiqing Luo's brows rose. Long Ao didn't give her any face as he laughed out. You weakling, I'm afraid you don't know that monster's ability. Just based on you. You want to seal that monster? Do you know that in order to kill him, your mother even sacrificed her life and only managed to seal him? Just based on you. I'm afraid even 10 lives aren't enough for you to play with. Chapter 5181. Long Outyan's tone was filled with ridicule. Even though she was in the dark, Yiqing Luo could feel Long Outyan's contemptuous and ridiculing gaze. Yiqing Luo was calm and wasn't affected by Long Outyan's ridicule. How would I know if I don't try? So many years have passed, the seal should have loosened. I heard that the Dark Nether Palace, a force that has spread to all the major realms without anyone noticing and has become a huge force, was founded by his divine sense. Yiqing Luo's eyes sunk when she mentioned the Palace of Darkness. Long Outyan obviously sensed the change in her emotions as he sneered. Do you think that the monster is suppressed by the seal now? You can take the opportunity to seal him again. I'll tell you this. Long Outyan suddenly stopped in his tracks. In the dark he accurately caught her wrist. That icy cold touch made Yiqing Luo shiver. She subconsciously wanted to shake his hand off. Long Outyan's voice was deep, revealing some unknown ridicule. That monster, even if only one part of his consciousness is outside to kill you, is as easy as flipping his palm. This sentence came out from Long Outyan's mouth. Regarding Huang Wuyo's evaluation, it was indeed too high. After all, people like Long Outyan rarely complimented others. To be praised by Long Outyan, his ability was not to be belittled. But what did Long Outyan's words mean by despising her? Did he look down on her? Don't think that you can surpass that woman just because you obtained the God Emperor's inheritance. Long Outyan looked at her in disdain in the dark. That woman's ability? I'm afraid no one in this world can surpass her, if not because. When he said this, his tone turned cold and he scoffed, full of disdain and ridicule. Yiqing Luo knew what Long Outyan had not finished his sentence. Actually, speaking of, Feng Ji's ability was definitely above Huang Wuyo, to a level that no one could surpass. But Feng Gu still gave up her life in order to seal Huang Wuyo. All these, just because she was a woman. Because a woman's heart was soft. Because a woman, no matter how much hatred she had, she still loved that man. Because of love. That was why she paid with her life. Because he had sacrificed his life, the longing and worry for his daughter for 10,000 years had worn away all the love he had for her. In the end, it was because one had never loved and the other was deeply in love. That's why it ended up like this. Yiqing Luo's long eyelashes fluttered lightly. She slightly lowered her eyebrows, and a wisp of coldness flowed through her charming eyes. her fair and delicate fingers slightly clenched. She said, "So, I will solve this problem for Mother." "Deal with it?" Long Outyin sneered without giving him any face. "You. How do you plan to deal with it?" Yi Qingluo's vision drooped slightly as she stared at her own hands without blinking. Although nothing could be seen in the darkness. However, her eyes were still bright as if they had been washed. "Little girl from the Feng family, inheriting the Divine Emperor's inheritance doesn't mean you can inherit that woman's power. The Divine Emperor's inheritance is the Divine Emperor's inheritance. At most, it can only relieve some of the burden on your body, but everything still depends on your own strength." Long Outyin laughed coldly. "You're a weakling. Even if you inherited the Divine Emperor's legacy, you're still a weakling." This point, Yi Qingluo understood clearly. The so-called Divine Emperor's inheritance only inherited the Divine Emperor's imprint. Trash 7th young mistress, Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love. Trash 7th young mistress, Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5182. Not inheriting all the previous God Emperor's power. The God Emperor's inheritance could not make her stronger out of nothing. After all, a person's strength depended on themselves. If Feng Gu really injected all his power into Yi Qingluo's body, Yi Qingluo might not be able to take it. Moreover, it was not the power that she had cultivated bit by bit. There was no way to fuse it with her body. She could only... Obtaining the God Emperor's inheritance was just an opportunity for Yi Qingluo to become stronger. With the God Emperor's inheritance, the burden that her body could take was far beyond her imagination. She could freely use the profound energy, absorb the earth's spiritual qi and advance to the profound grade. But to become stronger there was still a process. Previously her advancement speed was already considered too fast. This time she inherited the God Emperor's inheritance. The profound energy surged within her body and she could also touch the barrier to break through. But she was unable to advance. As if she was stuck at the same spot, unable to go up or down. Yi Qingluo wasn't sure what kind of feeling this was. Yi Qingluo's slender fair hand gently brushed past the azure dew bracelet on her wrist. The light in her eyes grew brighter, as if it could light up a star in the darkness. "I understand what you mean." She opened her mouth, her voice was clear. In the spacious and long tunnel, there was a faint echo. Following that, she slowly brushed away Long Ao's hand, her pink lips moved slightly again as she spat out, "But you forgot a very important point. I am my mother's daughter." Her gaze passed over Long Ao in the darkness, and fell straight into the boundless darkness. Her voice was so chilly that there was no joy or anger. "I am also the vessel that Huang Wuyo tried all ways and means to get." This sentence made Long Ao's ridiculing laughter stop. This was the truth. Yi Qingluo's existence. It was entirely Huang Wuyo who used the so-called forbidden technique to probe and design. Huang Wuyo tried all ways and means to come to Feng Ji's side, even sacrificing himself, to deceive Feng Ji's feelings, just to let Feng Gu give birth to his and Feng Ji's child. That, after Huang Wuyo probed, would be able to achieve all his ambitions. A child who possessed the one and only Divine Phoenix profound jade heart. A child who could nurture the Divine Phoenix profound jade heart, until the Divine Phoenix profound jade heart's energy was maximized. Yes, Yi Qingluo who had inherited Huang Wuyo and Feng Ji's powers. His true talent was not necessarily inferior to Feng Gu. He might even surpass Feng Gu. Of course this was only a guess. The truth would depend on Yi Qingluo's choice. Yi Qingluo also understood this point. She knew that her talent was different from ordinary people. He also knew that he had a heavy responsibility. She could not stay out of this matter just because she could not deal with Huang Wuyo. It was not only because she had promised Feng Gu. Or was it because? It was also for her own sake. Even if she didn't look for Huang Wuyo would not let her off either. Between her and Huang Wuyo, eventually one person would disappear from this world. It would be best if he could seal Huang Wuyo completely. But if it really came to that, she would not be soft-hearted. Long Ao remained silent for a while. Then he coldly snorted and restrained his gloomy and cold aura. He flicked his sleeves and continued to walk forward. "Suit yourself." Yi Qingluo confirmed Long Ao's direction in the dark based on the footsteps. She chuckled and followed him, saying, "Lord Mystic Dragon will help me, right?" Chapter 5183. Long Ao spurted out a cold stream from his nose as he gave a ridiculing laugh. He didn't give a direct answer. But that sneer seemed to be ridiculing Yiqing Luo's whims. Yiqing Luo didn't continue asking. She didn't know what had happened between Long Ao and her mother. But from Long Ao's words earlier, she could feel that Long Ao didn't hate her mother at all. More than that, there was a little care. Otherwise, based on Long Ao's character, Feng Gu had sealed him for thousands of years, and after he unlocked the seal, he actually didn't show any signs of rage. Although his words weren't respectful towards Feng Gu, it also contained zero disdain. But Yiqing Luo could obviously feel that Long Ao's words were disdainful. She wasn't sure. When she was dealing with Huang Wuyo and met with danger, would Long Ao help her? But she could be sure. At least Long Ao wouldn't stab her in the back. That was enough. Along the way there were no more words. The two of them walked down in the darkness. Yiqing Luo had been calculating the time. About half an hour or so. Long Ao's footsteps halted. Yiqing Luo almost knocked into him. Long Ao had already retreated backwards, avoiding Yiqing Luo's touch. After Yiqing Luo stabilized her footsteps, she stretched out her legs and circled around the surroundings to ascertain that it was flat ground before she opened her mouth. "We've reached? Do you think it's that simple?" Long Ao sneered, not knowing if it was her misconception. Long Ao's voice was heavy with breathing. But it was only for a moment. Yiqing Luo walked towards him, trying to stretch out her hand to grab him. Long Ao retreated backwards once again. So scared that your legs are soft and you still need this seat to support you?" He sneered coldly. "If you're afraid, then scram back now." Yiqing Luo pursed her lips and suddenly her fingertips pressed on the profound phoenix ring. "I remember, I have a luminous pearl in my realm ring. I'll take it out first. If you want to die, then take it out." Long Ao's gloomy deep voice was like an icy chill, eroding Yiqing Luo's eardrums. "This seat won't save you." Yiqing Luo's actions paused. Long Ao said in a mocking tone, "This is the place of that monster. You took the luminous pearl because you were afraid that he would not know. Did you come to find him?" Yiqing Luo's slender fingers tightened and clenched again. He found his voice after a long while. Then he said in a slightly hoarse voice, "Long Ao, your voice is somewhat wrong." Long Ao's breathing slightly froze. Soon after, he laughed mockingly, "What's wrong with my voice? I'm afraid you've been scared out of your wits and your mind isn't clear, right?" He seemed to be impatient and couldn't be bothered with Yiqing Luo's mental state as he walked forward. "If you want to find that monster, then follow me. Don't mess around with other messy things." What else was Yiqing Luo thinking about? However, Long Ao's pace was extremely fast. Listening to the sound of his footsteps, it seemed that he was quite a distance away from her. She could only suppress the restlessness in her heart and chase after him. He had barely taken 2 steps. Suddenly, in the underground tunnel, a gust of extremely cold hurricane surged, rushing so hard that Yiqing Luo shut her eyes, as she subconsciously raised her hand to cover her face. That gust of extremely cold, gloomy and strange aura scuttled up from the bottom of Yiqing Luo's feet. The majestic and vast profound energy confined her. "We've been discovered by that monster." In front, Long Ao's angry voice was heard. This time Yiqing Luo didn't hear wrongly. His voice was filled with suppressed panting as though he was restraining something. Chapter 5184. Long Ao. Yiqing Luo had just opened her mouth when a gust of biting cold yin qi rushed into her mouth. The surrounding profound light was filled with a biting cold murderous intent. The yin qi in the surroundings seemed to have gathered together. She was totally unable to move and could only allow that yin qi to spread throughout her limbs and bones. Slap. A slap landed on her back. That slap wasn't considered heavy, but it wasn't light either. It made Yiqing Luo feel a stinging pain. "Are you really that girl's daughter? Why are you so stupid?" A hand clasped her wrist. Following that, there was a strong suction force that pulled her out of the yin qi's restraint. Which was that slap. It dispersed the yin qi that was running around in his body. The pitch-black tunnel. The next moment, it became bright. Yiqing Luo's eyes were stimulated so much that she closed her eyes. When she opened her eyes again, she saw a handsome man dressed in black standing 5 steps in front of her. That figure tall and slender. That face handsome and imposing. On the surface, he gave off the feeling of a delicate scholar. But between his brows, there was a treacherous sinister aura. Yiqing Luo only needed one look to recognize him. Huang Wuyo. No. To be more precise, this was Huang Wuyo's consciousness. Previously at the Emperor God's tomb. That wisp of Huang Wuyo's consciousness had been crushed by her. She didn't expect that in such a short period of time, Huang Wuyo could split out another wisp of consciousness. And this Huang Wuyo in front of her. Obviously compared to the Huang Wuyo she met in the Emperor God's tomb, his aura was much stronger. Was it because? Was this his territory? The consciousness that Huang Wuyo split out wasn't Huang Wuyo, but it was indeed Huang Wuyo. Whatever the consciousness sensed, Huang Wuyo's sealed body could feel it. And like earlier when Yiqing Luo crushed that wisp of consciousness to Huang Wuyo, was a heavy blow. My dear daughter, you miss your father already? Huang Wuyo's lips curled into a sinister smile. That smile didn't reach his eyes at all. That pair of eyes that seemed to be so cold that there was not the slightest bit of warmth made people shudder. Yiqing Luo stared at Huang Wuyo as her pupils contracted slightly. You're not worthy. Not worthy to call her daughter. He didn't deserve the sacred title of daddy. Huang Wuyo did not get angry. Instead, the smile on his lips grew wider, and the cold aura he exuded became stronger. No matter how unwilling you are to admit it, your father is still your father. His black robe fluttered despite the lack of wind. Mysterious yin qi lingered around his body, forming a black oval protective shield that enveloped him. She only met his gaze. Yiqing Luo's hands and feet turned cold. She pursed her lips, shifted her gaze and looked in the direction of Long Ao. Long Ao her words stopped at the tip of her lips. Beside her, Long Ao, who was originally filled with ruthlessness and murderous intent, was lightly panting at this moment. He stood not far behind her on her left side. That black brocade robe was already covered in blood. His entire body was covered with scars. Even his face, which was half covered in scales and half handsome, had a few scratches. Yiqing Luo's throat tightened. How did you? No wonder till the end Long Ao didn't say a single word. No wonder after hearing Long Ao's voice she felt strange. No wonder Long Ao didn't allow her to get close and didn't allow her to touch him. The injuries on Long Ao's body were obviously new. Were the injuries he got when he walked down that tunnel? Chapter 5185. Long Outyan's face was dark and cold. The murderous look in his eyes was extremely obvious. He raised his hand and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Drops of blood, Chapter 5186. The Grave of Huang Wuyo 8. Please wait for a moment. After the content has been updated, please refresh the page to get the latest update. Chapter 5186. Not waiting for Long Ao to flare up. Yiqing Luo had already raised her eyes. Her long and narrow eyes were filled with ridicule and ridicule. She looked at Huang Wuyo, her tone was slightly cold, without much emotion. Palace of Darkness. The real Palace Lord, why do I feel that you're so sour when I hear your words? Why, are you regretting hurting my mother, regretting hurting this daughter of yours? Do you feel that you've lived for thousands of years but you're still alone, with no one close to you, no one whom you can trust? That's very pitiful, very sad, right? What a pity. People like you, people without a heart, are destined to be alone. Until you die you'll be alone. The young lady's voice was clear, every word was enunciated clearly. Not much emotion. But unfortunately, this made one feel the ridicule in the young lady's tone. Every word was like a sharp blade, directly piercing into Huang Wuyo's heart. Huang Wuyo's eyes turned darker and darker. That handsome face was filled with emotions, contorting, gradually turning sinister. His malicious cold eyes swept towards Yiqing Luo. It was just a simple action. But it seemed to have gathered a majestic and powerful energy, suppressing her to the point that even breathing was a little difficult. Yiqing Luo's face turned slightly pale. The action of bandaging Long Ao's wound was slightly stagnant. Feng family's lass. Long Ao frowned as he spoke in a low voice, as he turned his hand to support Yiqing Luo's slightly trembling petite body. But his hand was pressed down by the young lady's hand. She said calmly, "Don't move, I don't want to waste my medicine." Saying that, she continued the action of her hand as her cold voice rippled, being poked in the heart, turning angry from embarrassment. She couldn't even be bothered to raise her brows, not looking at Huang Wuyo's expression, but continued on her own. "Palace Lord of Darkness, aren't you representing my father's identity to thank Long Ao? What's the use of verbal thanks? Why not give me some practical thank you? At least let me see how much sincerity you who claims to be my father has." His voice fell on the last word. Yiqing Luo had already bandaged Long Ao's wound. Retracting her hand, she casually raised her eyebrows and looked at Huang Wuyo. When she met Huang Wuyo's eyes, which were filled with raging waves of shock, the expression on her face dimmed slightly, but she did not have much of a reaction. Heh! Huang Wuyo let out a light chuckle, his thin lips curling into a sinister smile. This mouth of yours is much more powerful than your mother's. He stared at Yiqing Luo's face, which was extremely similar to Feng Ji's, as his eyes revealed an undetectable madness. Once again, his thin lips moved slightly as the words that came out of his mouth were cold and sinister. It's better to be like your mother, at least you know how to be obedient. Yiqing Luo's sharp senses caught a flash of madness in his eyes when he stared at her earlier. She frowned and could not hide the disgust in her eyes. Palace Master of the Palace of Darkness, do you know what you look like now? Without waiting for Huang Wuyo to reply, she gave a direct answer, like a panic-stricken mad dog. Panicking out of fear? Huang Wuyo's face turned cold. What a joke. Just based on the two of you, you think you can make this seat panic? This phrase was really ridiculous. This seat's obedient daughter, surely you don't think that? After obtaining the so-called God Emperor's inheritance, you can really override this seat's head? You're this seat's daughter? Your innate talent, how could it possibly surpass this seat's? Chapter 5187. This seat had said right from the start, you inheriting the God Emperor's inheritance is merely a waste of resources. Only this seat. This seat inherits the God Emperor's inheritance. Then you will be able to display the true power of the God Emperor. Huang Wuyo's gaze towards Yiqing Luo was filled with greed. But it's alright. You inheriting the God Emperor's inheritance is the same as this seat inheriting it. After all, you are my daughter and the person I want is also you. His last three words were suppressed to an extremely low tone. For no reason, it added a strange chill to the air. Yiqing Luo could feel that he was staring at her divine phoenix profound heart jade. The meaning of Huang Wuyo's words was planning to nurture the profound heart jade. When the time was right, he would use his method to strip her of the divine phoenix profound heart jade and the God Emperor's inheritance? Huang Wuyo could do this? Yiqing Luo was doubtful and couldn't believe it. The God Emperor's inheritance wasn't that easy to inherit. Moreover, the God Emperor's inheritance needed to be recognized by the inheritance. If it wasn't recognized, it would be of no use. For example, Feng Liqiong was the same. That was why she was only an acting God Emperor for the past 10,000 years. Even if Huang Wuyo really killed her, he probably wouldn't be able to get the God Emperor's inheritance right? So, what was Huang Wuyo planning? Yiqing Luo concealed the deep meaning in her eyes and calmed her emotions down, not showing that she was affected by his words in front of Huang Wuyo. Her brows rose slightly as she spoke casually. The palace lord of the secluded palace is really agitated, looks like. I've hit the jackpot. She tilted her head, and her charming eyes were tinged with a bit of ridicule. If you weren't panicking, why would you, even when your vitality is at its peak, you still have to use a part of your divine sense to stop me? Her vision went past Huang Wuyo and looked at the bottomless tunnel behind him as she gave a chilly smile. When you sensed that Long Ao and I had entered this area, you became anxious, so anxious that you totally didn't wish for me to take another step forward. Yiqing Luo's smile suddenly stopped at this moment. The coldness in her long and narrow eyes, as well as the flames on her body, instantly exploded. The Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace is taking such a huge risk to stop me. This is completely different from what you said when you said you didn't take me seriously. Is this what they mean by saying no but being honest on the inside? The girl's mocking tone and that ice-cold expression. This caused Huang Wuyo's pupils to shrink. It was as if he had seen Feng Gu looking at him with hatred in her eyes. He vaguely remembered. Back then, when Feng Gu sealed him here, she looked at him with that gaze. At that time, Feng Gu, just like the current Yiqing Luo, his face was reflected in her eyes. However, he no longer welcomed the love he had for her back then. All that was left was hatred and ruthless coldness. Huang Wuyo's vision blurred for a moment. An indescribable pain came from the empty place in his heart. This kind of pain was extremely unfamiliar. This feeling of emptiness that could not be filled was extremely unfamiliar. He did not like this feeling at all. His heart was filled with vexation, causing his emotions to become violent. His sleeves fluttered and his eyes were as cold as an ice mountain as he swept out a powerful profound energy, attacking towards Yiqing Luo. That speed was extremely fast. Yiqing Luo only felt a piercing cold air piercing past her face. The next moment, her shoulder was pressed down by Long Ao as he pulled her backwards. Raising her palm, she welcomed Huang Wuyo's attack. Chapter 5188. Bang. The two forces collided. Long Ao was forced to retreat a few steps, and under Yiqing Luo's tugging, she retreated a few steps. Boundless profound energy formed an enormous profound light in midair, enveloping the entire sky. Two extremely cold auras intertwined with each other. The entire passageway was filled with an extreme chill, as if they were in an icehouse. Yiqing Luo couldn't help but shiver. Yiqing Luo's trembling was noticed by Long Ao. He pulled Yiqing Luo and leapt several steps backwards. He only stopped when he reached the stairs that he came from. This Huang Wuyo. Even though it's just a wisp of his spiritual sense and he was severely injured, he's still so powerful. Old Man Song's voice resounded in Yiqing Luo's mind. Indeed, a person who is called a monster. Yiqing Luo's brows creased as she stared at Huang Wuyo without blinking. As the profound lights collided, the power dispersed. Huang Wuyo's lips curled into a sinister smile before he made his move again. Long Ao fiercely spat. His face was gloomy and disdainful. He also pounced forward. Yiqing Luo couldn't even stop him in time. As soon as the two sides made their move, the fight was earth-shattering. Huang Wuyo's attacks were extremely ruthless. Every move he made was filled with a horrifying killing intent, aimed straight for the vitals. Long Ao's killing intent also burst forth. This made Yiqing Luo finally understand. What was the Azura of Hell? His aura, which was filled with bloodlust and killing intent, was completely revealed. However, after all, Long Ao was injured. The medicinal pill which Yiqing Luo refined, no matter how strong the medicinal effect was, it was not possible to make Long Ao recover to his original state in such a short period of time. In addition, the auras of the two Raos were too sinister. Yin energy lingered in the air. It had a huge impact on Yiqing Luo. Long Ao was somewhat apprehensive. Huang Wuyo took advantage of this misgivings. In this exchange, Long Ao was at a disadvantage. This was an inevitable result. Of course, Yiqing Luo couldn't possibly watch Long Ao fight alone, and sit back and do nothing. Long Ao had brought her to the place where Huang Wuyo was sealed. No matter what their motives were, the only thing she could be sure of was that Long Ao had no malice towards her. Huang Wuyo seized the opportunity and made an illusory move, attacking Long Ao's vitals with a backhand. Swish, a wisp of flame shot out. In the midst of two gloomy and dark rays like a leaping flame, it pushed aside the fight between the two of them. The two of them quickly separated. That streak of raging flames swept through the air with a whoosh and returned to the slender, white hand. The girl's bright face was calm. Long Ao also took advantage of the situation to avoid Huang Wuyo's vital attack and flew to a safe zone. He frowned as he looked at Yiqing Luo. Who asked you to take action? Yiqing Luo raised her eyes were as clear as water, without much undulation. She pursed her pink lips and pinched the glower flame fan in her fingertips. Her clear voice was filled with some hostility. Since I have already inherited the position of the God Emperor, then it is my responsibility to reseal him. Her gaze slowly shifted towards Huang Wuyo. There's something you said that I don't agree with. She slowly raised her hand. The azure dew bracelet on his wrist flowed with a few wisps of cold red light. The cherry blossoms in full bloom lingered in the air. That was the azure dew bracelet, gradually releasing its energy. The red glow of the raging flame enveloped Yiqing Luo's entire body. It set off the young lady as though she had walked out from a sea of fire, stepping on a path of fire. Her entire body was filled with a thick ruthless chill, which didn't lose out to the two Raos. Chapter 5190. The glower flame fan retracted. The silver thread on Huang Wuyo's palm seemed to have come alive as it swam back. Huang Wuyo narrowed his eyes as he stared at his palm, which was covered with blood, for some time before he slowly turned his gaze back to Yiqing Luo. He raised his hand and licked his palm. His lips, which were stained with blood, made him look even more treacherous. My good daughter, you really let me down. Yiqing Luo's expression didn't change at all. After she retracted the glower flame fan, her vision sized up the surroundings. The energy which she released earlier wasn't weak at all. The feeling of the earth quaking and mountains shaking wasn't an illusion. But as it turned out, there wasn't any collapse in this huge and bright underground cave. Not even gravel flew around. It was as if the earth quaking, mountains shaking, and all kinds of collapsing and rumbling sounds were just an illusion. Yiqing Luo's brows creased slightly as her half-squinted eyes revealed a wisp of cold glint. She frowned as she looked at Long Ao. Her wrist moved and the azure dew bracelet shone brightly. A huge vermilion bird with raging flames appeared out of thin air. The moment Qi Yan appeared, it raised its head and gave out a clear cry. In this spacious underground cave, the echo reverberated. Finally willing to let this sacred beast out. Qi Yan cried out a few times as it landed in front of Yiqing Luo. Its blood-red eyes scanned the surroundings. Finally his gaze landed on Huang Wuyo. That arrogant Qi Yan instantly lowered its arrogance. It's you? Qi Yan's head turned towards Yiqing Luo as its sharp mouth poked Yiqing Luo. He isn't. The four sacred beasts were once Feng Ji's contracted battle pets. Following beside Feng Gu, they naturally met Huang Wuyo. They had once helped Feng Gu and Huang Wuyo in a great battle. That battle, Feng Gu paid the price with his life. And they were forced to sleep for thousands of years. All of this was because of this man in front of them. But wasn't he already sealed by Feng Gu? Why would he see him again? Huang Wuyo's line of sight fell on Qi Yan, but it only took a glance at him before it shifted away. He curved his lips, laughing sinisterly and treacherously. Good daughter, you don't think a stupid bird can nourish me, right? 10,000 years ago, summoned the four great sacred beasts to attack me, but it was useless. Do you think that, compared to Gur, your contracted four great sacred beasts are a match for me? Huang Wuyo laughed confidently and ostentatiously. He slowly put down his blood-covered hand, and the greed in his eyes reappeared. My dear daughter, Gur's soul has already dispersed. And I am your one and only kin in this world. Why don't you stay by my side? Not only can you enjoy my fatherly love, but I will also not bury your talent. Do you want to lose me, your father, after losing your mother? In between Yiqing Luo's brows, there wasn't a single bit of emotion. It was as if he didn't take Huang Wuyo's words to heart. She sneered as she looked at Huang Wuyo, speaking immodestly, "Your disgusting face really makes me feel disgusted." Her fingertips moved slightly. Following that, her peripheral vision swept towards Qi Yan. At the same time, Qi Yan opened his mouth and spat out a blazing flame, instantly engulfing the entire underground cave. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. The sound of the rising flame was extremely clear in the quiet and spacious underground cave. Chapter 5191. The flame darted and rolled towards Huang Wuyo. It brushed past Huang Wuyo's face. Huang Wuyo flicked his sleeves and the dense profound yin qi pushed the flame away. Soon after, the mysterious yin qi, which was as thick as a black fog, wrapped him up tightly. It directly blocked the burning of the red flame. He laughed sinisterly. My dear daughter, I've said that the four sacred beasts can't do anything to me. What can a stupid bird do? His gaze towards Yiqing Luo was tainted with a trace of unknown mockery. But, since my dear daughter wants to test it out, I, as her father, will naturally satisfy her wish. As his voice fell, the expression on Huang Wuyo's face suddenly turned gloomy. His face was filled with thick malice, and with the excitement of teasing his prey. The next moment, his body was like an arrow leaving the bow as he darted towards the red flame. He stretched out his hand and stretched out his 5 fingers like an eagle's claw, flickering with dark profound yin qi. That destructive yin qi seemed to have opened its bloody mouth, as though it was going to swallow the red flame whole. My dear daughter wants to see Vermilion Bird die. I will fulfill it. Huang Wuyo's speed was very fast. But Yiqing Luo's speed was even faster. Just as Huang Wuyo's 5 fingers were about to clasp the red flame's neck, a gust of hurricane struck. The majestic profound energy surged and the glower flame fan's wind blade was as sharp as a knife. The silver wire wrapped around Huang Wuyo's wrist again. And at the same time, the red flame's figure disappeared in front of Huang Wuyo. Yiqing Luo's reaction was fast. She just needed to slow down a little. There was a possibility that it would turn into another story. She knew that Huang Wuyo was already on guard against her glower flame fan's silver wire. Yiqing Luo had no intention to tangle with Huang Wuyo directly. At the moment when Huang Wuyo rushed towards the red flame, she summoned it back to the pet space in time. A soul-contracted battle pet. The master's summon was the first to bear the brunt. Huang Wuyo had no time to react. And at this moment she seized the opportunity to clamp down on Huang Wuyo's wrist, which also stopped Huang Wuyo's mobility. Huang Wuyo looked at the scarlet flame that was just inches away from him, but it suddenly disappeared. His wrist was also bound by the silver threads, making it impossible for him to move. Using his brain a little, he understood. This was Yiqing Luo's scheme. There was a tinge of admiration in his eyes, and he didn't show any other emotions on his face because his movements were restricted. He smiled sinisterly as he looked at Yiqing Luo. "You're indeed this seat's daughter, you're indeed smart. This seat really wants to keep you in secluded palace more and more." Yiqing Luo's icy cold eyes calmly looked at Huang Wuyo. Under the light of the blazing flames, the young girl's beautiful face appeared even more beautiful and elegant. She pursed her pink lips and her eyes were cold. "If I could, I really don't want to admit that my father is someone like you." Huang Wuyo's lips curled into a sinister smile. "Unfortunately, there's no if in this world." He lowered his eyes and looked at his bound hands. His smile was a little sinister and mocking. "My good daughter's way of thinking and calculation are not bad. It's just that she used it on the wrong person." His hands were filled with blood as he slowly twisted them. He allowed the silver wires to embed into his skin, drawing out numerous blood scars, but he had an indifferent attitude. Suddenly, the black chi around his body shook. A loud bam was heard. The silver wires which were wrapped around Huang Wuyo's wrist suddenly exploded. That indestructible silver wires which had been following Yiqing Luo, at this moment broke into pieces, as though it had lost all its vitality. Chapter 5192. Yiqing Luo's pupils constricted abruptly. That was the silver thread which Xian had given her. It was actually broken by Huang Wuyo. Yiqing Luo's brows surfaced a glint of bloodthirsty viciousness. Her slender fingers pinched the glower flame fan as her fingertips started to turn pale. "TSK. Good daughter, don't look at this seat with that expression." Huang Wuyo looked at the young lady's pale face as his thin lips curled into a sinister smile. "This seat had long said that based on your ability, there's no way you can hurt this seat." Yiqing Luo lowered her eyes to congeal on those broken strands of silver wire, as she slowly raised her eyes. That pair of long and narrow eyes didn't have any fluctuation of emotions. On the contrary, it seemed to be stained with frost. Her lips curled into an enchanting but bloodthirsty smile. "Then, did you really think that I summoned the scarlet flame just to tease you?" The glower flame fan in her hands spun and the majestic profound waves scuttled in the raging flames. Following that, it landed somewhere. She took a look at Long Ao's direction and after exchanging glances with him, they nodded at the same time. Looking at the direction where the glower flame fan was attacking, Huang Wuyo's complacent expression froze at this moment. He was just about to make a move. Suddenly, a huge wall blocked in front of him. Huang Wuyo subconsciously raised his palm and slapped downwards. Pa! It was the crisp sound of a slap falling. Huang Wuyo felt his arm going numb from the shock. The huge wall, in front of him was a patch of green and indestructible. Not only did his palm not cause the slightest bit of damage, but it also nearly broke his own hand. Black tortoise. It was the sacred beast black tortoise. Black fog surged in Huang Wuyo's eyes as he stared at the black tortoise which was curled up in the tortoise shell. On top of the tortoise shell, there were two snakes coiled around each other as they stuck out their scarlet tongues, swaying towards Huang Wuyo, as though it was ridiculing Huang Wuyo. Just as Huang Wuyo paused for a moment, a voice rang out. Yiqing Luo and Long Ao flew up abruptly as they headed towards the direction of the glower flame fan. Two rays of tyrannical profound chi struck downwards with a chilly murderous intent. Instantly, an enormous fluctuation of profound energy suddenly erupted from that direction. The surging mysterious yin chi suddenly rushed out, madly twisting in all directions, forming a huge black light. Yiqing Luo stretched out her hand and received the spinning glower flame fan. Then he raised his hand. A tongue of fire sprang up from the blazing flames, washing away the cold and terrifying profound yin energy of the drizzle cave. However, this action caused her to bear the violent surge of mysterious yin chi. Yiqing Luo made use of the glower flame fan to control the blazing flames, burning and dispersing the darkness. However, her power was at the stage of merging with the Divine Emperor's inheritance. Enduring the corrosion of the mysterious yin chi from Huang Wuyo's sealed grounds was a little strenuous. After a while, the profound yin chi went past the raging flames and charged straight towards Yiqing Luo. Like a sharp blade, It cut open wounds on Yiqing Luo's body. Get lost. Long Ao's sleeves fluttered. His purplish-black lips were tightly pursed. The half of his face that was covered in scales was slowly moving. Tightly, his entire face was covered with sparkling scales. His sleeves brushed towards Yiqing Luo, isolating the profound yin qi which was corroding Yiqing Luo's body. Yiqing Luo slightly condensed her breath as she kept the glower flame fan. Her gaze stopped for a moment at the blazing flames which formed a fire circle. After that she looked towards Huang Wuyo. Her lips curled as she gave a mocking smile. Your biggest shortcoming is that you are overly confident. Chapter 5193. Yiqing Luo summoned Qi Yan, not to deal with Huang Wuyo. Qi Yan's blazing flame could purify all the darkness in the world. Even if it couldn't purify Huang Wuyo's profound yin qi. But it would definitely affect the profound yin qi to a certain extent. Furthermore, earlier when she made her move, the underground cave wasn't affected in the slightest. She already had a guess in her heart. This underground cave, perhaps it wasn't the real devil domain any longer. Or to be more accurate, she was now in a completely different space. And this space was created by Huang Wuyo. So, any kind of power was unable to destroy this illusory space. The so-called underground cave passageway was probably just an illusion, which was also commonly known as illusion. The truth had proven that Yiqing Luo's guess was right. When Qi Yan came out and released the blazing flame, the entire underground cave was indeed affected. Huang Wuyo was overly confident, totally not putting Qi Yan in his eyes. Adding on to the fact that his attention had always been focused on Yiqing Luo. Because of this he totally didn't notice Qi Yan's motive. When the blazing flame burned the entire underground cave, the place where the profound yin qi was the densest, which was the source of the profound yin qi, would naturally be affected. This also gave Yiqing Luo an accurate location. The direction where Yiqing Luo and Qi Yan attacked earlier. It was the direction which led to the source of the profound yin qi. Yiqing Luo guessed that could possibly be the place where Huang Wuyo was sealed. Originally Yiqing Luo was guessing. But now, seeing Huang Wuyo's reaction, she was basically completely certain. Yiqing Luo's brows rose slightly as her pink lips pursed slightly. Huang Wuyo? No matter if it's because you're Huang Wuyo or the Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness today, I will atone for everything that you've done. There was a hint of coldness in her voice, and sonorous and forceful, showing her determination. Her vision paused for a moment on Huang Wuyo's face. Following that, she suddenly flipped her hand and placed Long Ao, who was already covered in scales, in front of her, as she leapt and flew towards the fire cave. Her speed was extremely fast. The peach blossom dress only left behind a beautiful arc. Huang Wuyo's pupils trembled as he gritted his teeth and flew into a rage out of humiliation. Fengqing Luo, come back here. With a quick sweep of his hand, the surging profound yin qi surged toward Xianxia. Xiangui's turtle shell was extremely hard. However, the mysterious yin qi that was filled with yin qi was like a thick black fog that covered it bit by bit. That kind of heavy and chilly feeling that made it impossible for it to move was still not a good feeling. Huang Wuyo passed by Xianxia and wanted to rush towards Yiqing Luo to stop her from entering the fire ring. Xianxia suddenly rose into the air. The indestructible turtle shell fiercely slammed into Huang Wuyo's back. Then, in the blink of an eye, he disappeared in the direction of the young girl. At the same time, the girl's figure completely disappeared from the ring of fire. His disciples left behind blazing flames that burned brightly. The lingering sparks shone brilliantly on their faces. It also reflected the sinister and treacherous expressions of the two people. Huang Wuyo cursed under his breath as he clenched his fists tightly and chased after the ring of fire. A hand suddenly blocked in front of him. Huang Wuyo raised his eyes and met with Long Ao's cold and treacherous eyes, which seemed to be ridiculing and ridiculing. His face sunk. Get lost. Your daughter indeed looks like that woman. Long Ao's gloomy and cold voice had a tinge of ridicule. Chapter 5194. 10,000 years ago you lost to that new Rao. 10,000 years later you're still being played around by that new Rao's daughter. Long Ao's tone was filled with ridicule. Revered Wuyu, look at your flustered and exasperated look, it's really ridiculous. Long Ao long. Huang Wuyo gritted his teeth as he raised his hand and locked onto Long Ao's neck, pressing him against the stone wall. What are you so pleased about? Did you really think that you're going to help that woman now? She won't know that you're actually my man. Speaking till here, he suddenly laughed lowly. Don't forget it's you who tricked her into coming to my formation. Long Ao's expression didn't show much emotion. He curled his thin lips as a hint of ridicule flashed past his cold and gloomy eyes. That murderous, bloody and ruthless aura surfaced on his brows. He said, the moment she pushed me away. I'm afraid she had already guessed it. Long Ao's brows drooped slightly. That cold and stiff face was covered with a thick, gloomy ruthlessness. This daughter of yours is smarter than you think. She's right about one thing: you're indeed overly confident. If you want to leave this place successfully, it's best not to look at her. Passed through the fire circle. Yiqing Luo supported herself against the wall as she stabilized her footsteps. What entered her eyes was a huge tomb chamber. No. Or perhaps it was a slaughterhouse. This was a huge tomb chamber. The place where Yiqing Luo was at was the entrance of this tomb chamber. Huge coffins were placed one after another, filling up the entire chamber. Yiqing Luo looked over. In the huge tomb chamber there were at least hundreds of coffins. All the coffin lids weren't closed, as they were neatly lined up in a row horizontally beside the coffins. But the most shocking thing was, many of the open coffins had naked corpses hanging on them, pierced through the human body with a sharp hook. Yiqing Luo also discovered that there were a few who were still alive. Those corpses hanging above the coffins, or living people, were all covered with blood-red threads, almost forming a red net entangling them. Even for Yiqing Luo, when she saw this scene, she shuddered. What was Huang Weiyou doing? How could such a terrible azure field be created here? Yiqing Luo was just about to step into the tomb. Suddenly he heard footsteps coming from the front. She immediately dodged and hid in the dark of the cave entrance. When he looked over, he saw a group of people carrying wooden basins and walking into the coffin in an orderly manner. No. Those people couldn't be called people. Yiqing Luo could obviously sense the thick, profound yin qi from them. It was a corpse puppet. These undead puppets were different from what Yiqing Luo had seen previously. They didn't look much different from normal people. The only difference was that his face was expressionless and his eyes were lifeless. There was not the slightest fluctuation. There were a total of 8 undead puppets. Each puppet held a wooden basin in their hands. From this distance, Yiqing Luo couldn't see what was in the wooden basin. The dead corpse puppets were expressionless as they walked to Lu Zai's coffin in an orderly manner. Then he poured the contents of the wooden basin into the coffin. This one pour. Yiqing Luo only saw some black-red liquid in the wooden basin. There were some things floating on top. After the dead corpse puppets finished pouring the liquid, another dead corpse puppet came over and took over the wooden basin. Chapter 5195. It was orderly, like an assembly line project. He focused on doing the things at hand as if there was nothing else around him. After the black-red liquid was poured into the coffins, the living man hanging in the air, still breathing, was put into the coffin bit by bit. When the black hooks above fell, those who were still conscious widened their eyes in horror, wanting to struggle. Despite the large amount of blood that the hooks had hooked out of his body, he struggled with all his might. But they were still placed into the coffins. But when a few living people entered the coffins, Yiqing Luo couldn't see what happened in the coffins from this angle. She only saw the moment the people entered. A black-red mist sprang up from the coffins, and immediately after, it was covered with balls of profound yin qi. Vaguely, Yiqing Luo seemed to see those living coffins, one by one, stretched out 2 hands at the same time. Stretched out perfectly straight. Then, it was surrounded by the profound yin qi. The arms were covered with densely packed blood lines, following the profound yin qi as it seeped out. But after a moment, Yiqing Luo saw those pairs of hands, withering at a speed visible to the naked eye, leaving only a layer of skin and bones. After that, pairs of skin and bones hands fell into the coffins. When the bones touched the coffins, there was a bang sound. After doing all this, those corpse puppets, one by one, turned around and left expressionlessly. This is... Old Man Song's horrified voice sounded in Yiqing Luo's mind, bloodlust skill. The azure dew bracelet on her wrist was somewhat restless, as if Old Man Song wanted to drill out from inside, but was trying his best to suppress it. Yiqing Luo raised her hand and pressed on the azure dew bracelet. What is bloodlust skill? The young lady's slender fingers gently brushed over the azure dew bracelet, suppressing Old Man Song's restlessness. Over there, hundreds of coffins, to Old Man Song's spiritual body, had a great attraction. as if there was some kind of power enticing Old Man Song. Fortunately, the azure dew bracelet suppressed Old Man Song's impulse. Coupled with Yi Ching Luo's comfort, Old Man Song calmed down. His tone was a little gloomy. I've only seen descriptions of this technique in ancient books. I'm not too sure about the specifics. This cultivation technique is an ancient forbidden curse, extremely sinister. 100 coffins, fresh blood and flesh, watered with blood. Old Man Song's tone became more and more gloomy, as if he was suppressing the emotions in his heart. This place of extreme een, to cultivate such an ancient and sinister cultivation method, the person behind the scenes of Dark Nether Palace, wants to destroy the world? Hearing Old Man Song's words, Yi Ching Luo was stunned for a moment. This cultivation method was actually so powerful, destroy the world? Yi Ching Luo raised her eyes and looked ahead at the hundreds of coffins. She didn't know if it was because of Old Man Song's words, but she seemed to smell a faint scent of blood under the dense profound Yin energy. The blood threads that were entwined by the mysterious Yin Qi formed a dense blood web above the coffin. Then he followed the guidance of the mysterious Yin Qi. Little by little it spread forward. The blood threads weaved into a huge net that penetrated the stone wall in front of them and slid forward bit by bit. That direction, Yi Ching Luo pressed the azure dew bracelet as she asked in her heart, Old Man Song, what is the use of this Yin bloodlust skill? Old Man Song's tone was heavy as he said word by word. The ancient books didn't record it in detail, but according to my observation, I think that the Dark Nether Palace set up the forbidden curse here, to cultivate the Yin bloodlust skill. Their motive is probably that you're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.